The emergency beacon screamed across 17 star systems, its desperate signal bouncing between relay stations like a dying animal's final cry. On the peaceful world of Zelthara Prime, the gentle Zeltharian Council received the transmission with growing horror. The Korthak Empire has broken the Neutral Zone Treaty, announced Council Elder Vethis, her crystalline voice trembling with fear. They've invaded 3 peaceful sectors. Millions of innocent beings are dying. The council chamber fell silent. The Zeltharians were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced healing technologies and peaceful nature. But they possessed no military force. Their pale blue skin seemed to grow even paler as they contemplated the approaching threat. "We must send the call across all known civilizations," declared another elder. "Perhaps someone will help us." Within hours, distress signals reached every major galactic power. The proud Valorian Republic, with their towering golden cities and advanced energy shields, responded first. "We sympathize with your plight," came their formal reply. "But the Korthak Empire possesses quantum disruptors that can penetrate our defenses. We cannot risk our citizens." The tech-savvy Nexarian Collective offered similar excuses. Their mechanical voices buzzed with calculated fear as they explained how their drone armies would be useless against Korthak bioweapons. One by one, every advanced civilization declined to help. The Ethereal Conclave cited their pacifist principles. The Titan Confederacy claimed their forces were spread too thin. The Crystal Dominion worried about economic sanctions. Days passed as the Korthak war machine rolled forward, consuming planets like a cosmic plague. Refugee ships flooded the outer systems, carrying tales of cities burned to ash and populations enslaved. On Earth, a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, the message arrived at the United Nations Space Command. Most galactic civilizations barely knew humans existed. To them, Earth was just another primitive world, struggling to master basic space travel, while others soared between stars at impossible speeds. General Sarah Martinez sat in the dim briefing room, studying the transmission data. Around her, military advisors from a dozen nations leaned forward, their faces grim. "The signal's authentic," confirmed Dr. James Chen, Earth's leading xenolinguistics expert. "These beings are facing genocide, and nobody's willing to help them." "What's our current fleet status?" Martinez asked Admiral Jackson. 47 operational vessels. The Pride of Earth, our newest dreadnought, just completed trials. We've got 12 destroyer squadrons, 6 cruiser groups, and our Marines. He paused. "General, our entire space force is maybe a tenth the size of any major galactic power." Martinez studied the tactical displays showing Korthak battle formations. Their ships were massive, dark things that looked like mechanical vultures. Intel reports described weapons that could crack moons and shields that had never been breached. "They think we're helpless," she murmured. "Just another primitive species cowering in the outer rim." "Aren't we?" asked Colonel Kim, their youngest advisor. "Look at these numbers. The Korthak have conquered 40 star systems. Their smallest ship is twice the size of our largest." Martinez stood slowly, her weathered hands clasped behind her back. She'd served in 3 conflicts before humanity reached the stars. She'd seen impossible odds before. "Gentlemen, ladies, you're thinking like peacetime strategists. The Korthak Empire, all these advanced civilizations, they've grown soft. They fight with overwhelming technology because they've forgotten what real war looks like." She turned to face the room. "We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Every generation of humans has known conflict. We've learned to win with less, to adapt, to sacrifice everything for victory." Dr. Chen shifted uncomfortably. "General, respectfully, this isn't Afghanistan or Vietnam. These beings have technology we can barely comprehend." "Technology fails," Martinez replied sharply. "It breaks down, gets hacked, runs out of power. But human determination? That's eternal." She walked to the star map, pointing to the endangered systems. "Look at this objectively. The Korthak expect overwhelming technological superiority to guarantee victory. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to surrender when the odds look impossible. Admiral Jackson studied the data feeds, showing Korthak battle tactics. They do seem to rely heavily on their quantum weapons and bioshields. Very standardized formations. Predictable, Martinez agreed. When you've never lost, you stop adapting. You follow the same patterns because they've always worked. But our weapons, protested Colonel Kim. Our missiles can't penetrate their shields. Our fighters can't match their speed. Martinez smiled grimly. Who says we need to match them? Every empire in history thought it was invincible. The Persians thought that about the Greeks. The Spanish thought that about guerrilla fighters. The Germans thought that about winter. She activated the holographic display, showing human ships alongside the massive Korthak vessels. We don't need to beat them ship to ship. We need to make them bleed. We need to show them that their technology can't protect them from human stubbornness. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Earth's military was being asked to challenge an empire that had crushed civilizations with millions of years of technological advancement. The Zeltharians are 3 weeks from invasion, Admiral Jackson observed. If we're going to help them, we need to move fast. Then we move fast, Martinez declared. Contact all fleet commanders. Emergency deployment protocols. Every ship we can muster. General, Dr. Chen said carefully, the other civilizations will think we're insane. Humans throwing themselves against impossible odds. Let them think that, Martinez replied. Sometimes, insanity looks like courage from the other side. Within 6 hours, Earth's entire space fleet was mobilizing. The Pride of Earth led the formation, its angular hull reflecting starlight like polished steel. Around it, destroyers and cruisers formed up in tight formations that would have seemed ridiculously small to any galactic power. But there was something different about these ships. Their crews moved with practiced efficiency born from centuries of warfare. Every human aboard understood they might not come home, and they'd made peace with that possibility. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, emergency broadcasts went out across Earth's communication networks. The president addressed a nervous planet. My fellow humans, today we answer a call for help from beings we've never met, facing an enemy that considers us irrelevant. We go not because we're strong enough to win, but because we're human enough to try. The message reached every corner of Earth, from the sprawling cities to the smallest villages. And everywhere, the response was the same. Recruitment centers flooded with volunteers. Factories switched to wartime production. Humanity prepared for a war it had no business fighting. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Korthak intelligence intercepted Earth's military communications. The artificial intelligences that ran their war machine processed the data with mechanical efficiency. Species designation, human. Classification, primitive. Threat level, negligible. The Korthak Empire had never been wrong about threat assessments. Their biomechanical scouts had observed dozens of species, and primitive always meant helpless. They dismissed the human fleet as irrelevant, too small to affect their calculations. But deep in the encrypted channels between human ships, a different kind of communication flowed. Veterans sharing tactics learned in desert wars and jungle conflicts. Engineers discussing improvised weapons and field repairs. Marines trading stories about impossible missions and last stands. The Korthak had technology beyond human comprehension, but they'd never faced anything like human warfare. Forged in the crucible of endless conflict and tempered by a species that had learned to find victory in the ashes of defeat. As both fleets raced toward their destiny, the galaxy held its breath. Every advanced civilization watched with mixture of curiosity and pity, waiting to see how quickly the primitive humans would be crushed. They had no idea they were about to witness something unprecedented. What happens when an empire built on technological supremacy meets a species that has turned warfare into an art form and considers dying for strangers a noble calling? The real war was about to begin. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, where the Korthak Advance Fleet was preparing to assault the Zeltharian homeworld. Admiral Jackson studied the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 43 Korthak vessels hung in formation around the gas giant's moon, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with organic energy. "Jesus," whispered Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. "Those ships are massive." The largest Korthak dreadnought stretched nearly 3 kilometers, its surface covered in writhing tentacle-like appendages that seemed to taste the vacuum around it. Smaller vessels, each still dwarfing human cruisers, moved in perfect synchronization like a school of predatory fish. "Sir," reported Commander Walsh from communications, "we're receiving a transmission from the Korthak fleet." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that defied human understanding. The Korthak commander stood over 2 meters tall, its body a nightmarish fusion of insect and machine. Chitinous plates covered areas where cybernetic implants glowed with malevolent red light. Multiple eyes focused on the human fleet with dismissive contempt. "Primitive species." The creature's voice buzzed with mechanical undertones. "You have wandered into a restricted zone. Depart immediately, or be eliminated." Admiral Jackson stepped forward, his uniform crisp despite the hours of travel. "This is Admiral Jackson of the Earth Fleet. We're here to assist the Zeltharian people. Withdraw from this system." The Korthak commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "You dare challenge the Empire? With these toys? Our sensors indicate your largest vessel mass is barely 50,000 tons. Our escorts are twice that size." "Size isn't everything," Jackson replied calmly. "Ask the dinosaurs." The alien's multiple eyes narrowed. "Your species designation shows no significant military achievements. You have not even conquered your own star system. What makes you believe you can oppose us?" Captain Maria Santos, commanding the destroyer Indefatigable, cut into the channel. "Because we've been perfecting the art of killing each other for 50,000 years. You're just another target." The transmission ended abruptly. Within seconds, the Korthak fleet began moving into attack formation, their bioships writhing through space with organic grace. "All ships, execute Formation Bravo," Admiral Jackson commanded. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them bleed." The human fleet scattered like startled minnows, abandoning traditional formation, flying for the chaotic tactics of guerrilla warfare. Each ship began moving independently, using micro-jumps and evasive maneuvers that would have seemed impossible to any orderly military force. The Korthak opened fire with their quantum disruptors, beams of coherent energy that could split atomic bonds. The weapons were devastating against traditional shields, designed to overwhelm defensive systems with raw power. But the human ships weren't using traditional tactics. The destroyer Yorktown dove beneath the plane of battle, using the gas giant's gravity well to slingshot around the planet at impossible angles. The cruiser Wellington fired a spread of nuclear missiles, not at enemy ships, but at the space around them, creating debris fields that disrupted targeting sensors. "Their weapons are too slow," reported Captain Reyes from the Madrid. "They're designed for long-range bombardment of stationary targets." The Korthak had never faced enemies that refused to engage in orderly battle. Their massive ships, built for overwhelming firepower, struggled to track human vessels that darted between asteroids and used every trick in the book. Sergeant Major Kelly, commanding marine assault shuttles from the Pride of Earth, watched the battle unfold with professional appreciation. "Look at those beautiful bastards," he muttered to his squad. "They fight like they've got something to prove." The human advantage became clear as the battle continued. Every human crew member was a veteran of simulated combat, trained on scenarios where they were outgunned and outnumbered. Earth's military doctrine was built around asymmetric warfare, turning disadvantages into advantages. Captain Chen in the destroyer Defiant noticed something crucial. "Admiral, the Korthak ships move in predetermined patterns. They're not adapting to our tactics." "Confirmed," replied Jackson. "Their technology is so advanced, they've forgotten how to improvise. Target their formation leaders." The human fleet converged on the Korthak command vessels using tactics that would have made ancient pirates proud. The destroyer, Audacious, feinted toward the enemy's left flank, drawing fire, while the cruiser Texas came up from below, launching a full spread of enhanced fusion warheads. The Korthak shields held, But something unexpected happened. The biomechanical ships began showing signs of confusion, their perfect formations wavering as they tried to respond to attacks from impossible angles. "Sir," reported the sensor operator on the Pride of Earth, "the enemy ships are trying to communicate with each other using biological neural networks. Our chaotic movements are overloading their coordination systems." Admiral Jackson smiled grimly. "They've built themselves a hive mind. That's their strength and their weakness. Target their communication nodes. Human missiles, originally designed to penetrate Earth's most advanced defenses, found new purpose. They couldn't breach Korthak shields directly, but they could disrupt the bioelectric fields the enemy used for coordination. The battle became a symphony of human adaptability. When their conventional weapons proved insufficient, human engineers began modifying them on the fly. Fusion warheads were reconfigured to emit electromagnetic pulses. Point defense systems were reprogrammed to fire in patterns that created sensor shadows. Lieutenant Commander Park, aboard the cruiser Ranger, watched her weapons officer perform miracles with targeting computers. "Sir, I'm reading massive system strain on the enemy flagship. Their bioneural networks are having trouble processing our attack patterns." The Korthak had never encountered an enemy that fought without honor, without rules, without the civilized constraints that governed galactic warfare. Humans attacked from every direction at once, used debris as weapons, and seemed perfectly willing to ram enemy ships if necessary. Captain Santos proved that last point when her destroyer, badly damaged by a quantum disruptor hit, aimed straight for a Korthak heavy cruiser. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. It's been an honor serving with you." But at the last second, she triggered an emergency maneuver, using the cruiser's gravity field to swing around its hull while launching every torpedo aboard directly into the enemy ship's bioneural cluster. The explosion lit up space like a new star. "One down," Santos reported calmly as her crippled ship limped away. "Who's next?" The Korthak fleet began to show the first signs of genuine alarm. Their perfect formations dissolved into confusion as they tried to track human ships that seemed to appear everywhere at once. For the first time in their imperial history, they faced an enemy that fought like their survival depended on it. Which, of course, it did. "All ships," Admiral Jackson commanded, "initiate Phase 2. Let's show them what humans do when we're really angry." The battle was just beginning, but already the galaxy was taking notice. On a dozen worlds, advanced civilizations watched their sensors in amazement as a primitive species with inferior technology began systematically dismantling an enemy force 10 times their size. The Valorian Republic's military advisors stared at their displays in stunned silence. "How are they surviving?" one whispered. "The Korthak should have annihilated them in the first volley." On the Nexarian Collective's homeworld, mechanical minds processed battle data that defied their calculations. Human tactics showed patterns they couldn't predict, strategies that seemed to violate basic military principles. But most importantly, in the depths of space, Korthak High Command began receiving reports that challenged everything they believed about primitive species and technological supremacy. The humans weren't winning yet, but they were doing something far worse from the Korthak perspective. They were learning. Every exchange taught them more about enemy capabilities. Every loss made them more dangerous. And in the background, more human ships were coming. Earth's entire fleet was racing toward the battle, along with volunteer vessels from human colonies that had barely mastered spaceflight, but possessed something infinitely more valuable: the accumulated knowledge of a species that had turned warfare into a science. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when an irresistible force met an immovable object that refused to admit it was immovable. The reinforcement fleet arrived like a storm front rolling across the cosmos. Earth's second wave brought not just additional ships, but something that made the Korthak High Command's biomechanical hearts skip beats. Human creativity unleashed by desperation. Colonel Sarah Kim led the new formation from the experimental vessel Prometheus, a ship that barely qualified as military hardware. Built from a converted mining platform, it bristled with weapons that violated every galactic convention of civilized warfare. "Admiral," she reported to Jackson, "we've brought some party favors. Earth's engineers have been working overtime. The battle had raged for 6 hours when the game changed completely. Dr. Elizabeth Voss, Earth's leading physicist, had spent the journey analyzing Korthak technology through combat data. Her discovery would reshape galactic warfare forever. Their bioneural networks are quantum entangled, she explained over the command frequency. Every ship shares consciousness with the fleet. It makes them coordinated, but it also makes them vulnerable to quantum cascade failure. The humans had figured out how to turn the enemy's greatest strength into a critical weakness. Prometheus to all ships, Colonel Kim announced, initiating Operation Mindbreak. Target the quantum resonance frequencies in the enemy's collective consciousness. What happened next defied everything the galaxy understood about primitive species. Human ships began broadcasting carefully calibrated energy patterns, not to damage Korthak hulls, but to disrupt their shared awareness. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Korthak fleet, which had moved like a single organism, suddenly began showing signs of confusion. Ships collided with each other as their perfect coordination collapsed. Weapons fired at empty space as targeting systems received conflicting information from their collective intelligence. Captain Maria Santos, her destroyer barely held together by emergency repairs, watched the enemy formation dissolve with professional satisfaction. Look at that beautiful chaos. They built themselves a glass jaw and never realized it. But the Korthak Empire hadn't conquered 40 star systems by surrendering easily. Their massive dreadnought, a biomechanical nightmare 3 kilometers long, began adapting to human tactics with frightening speed. Bioarmor plates shifted and reformed. Weapon systems evolved in real time. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Torres, "the enemy flagship is learning. Its quantum disruptors are adjusting to our movement patterns." Admiral Jackson studied the tactical display with the calm focus of a man who'd spent 30 years preparing for impossible situations. "Then we don't give it time to learn. All ships, concentrate fire on the flagship. Everything we've got." The human fleet converged like wolves surrounding a wounded bear. Every missile, every energy weapon, every improvised projectile in the fleet was aimed at the Korthak command ship. But instead of trying to penetrate its shields directly, they attacked the space around it. Nuclear warheads detonated in carefully calculated patterns, creating gravitational distortions. Fusion bombs exploded in sequence, generating electromagnetic storms that interfered with bioneural communications. Human engineering crews, working with equipment held together by determination and spare parts, turned their ships into weapons platforms that defied rational design. The destroyer, Indomitable, commanded by Captain David Park, proved the effectiveness of human adaptability. His ship had lost most of its weapons in the first engagement, so his crew had converted the cargo bay into a mass driver, using magnetic acceleration to launch anything metallic at relativistic speeds. "Sir," reported his weapons officer, "we've loaded everything we can find. Spare hull plating, tools, even the coffee machine from the galley. If it can kill aliens, shoot it," Park replied grimly. The improvised projectiles struck the Korthak flagship like meteorites, each impact creating cascading failures in its biomechanical systems. The ancient ship, built to withstand conventional energy weapons, had no defense against chunks of metal traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Meanwhile, Sergeant Major Kelly led his Marine assault teams in a maneuver that would have made Patton weep with pride. Using captured Korthak shuttle technology, they infiltrated the flagship through maintenance ports that the enemy had never bothered to defend. "Remember," Kelly told his troops as they prepared for boarding action, "these things have never faced humans in close combat. They don't know what we're capable of when the odds are impossible." The Marines carried weapons that would have made galactic peacekeepers sick. Modified plasma rifles that ignored bioarmor. Grenades designed to disrupt neural networks. And most importantly, the accumulated knowledge of a species that had perfected urban warfare in 1,000 different conflicts. The boarding action became a masterclass in human aggression. Korthak warriors, bred for technological superiority, found themselves facing opponents who fought with a creativity born from desperation. Humans used their own equipment against them, turning maintenance robots into weapons and hacking bioneural interfaces with viruses designed for organic computers. Floor secured. Kelly reported as his team eliminated the last Korthak defenders in the command center. Beginning data extraction. What they found changed everything. The Korthak Empire wasn't just conquering systems for territory. They were harvesting biogenetic material from every species they encountered, building towards some ultimate fusion of organic and mechanical consciousness that would give them godlike power. Admiral, Dr. Voss reported after analyzing the captured data, they're not just trying to win this war, they're trying to transcend it, become something beyond physical limitations. Jackson processed this information with the strategic mind that had carried him through 3 decades of impossible situations. Then we stop them here. Now. Before they get what they need. The final phase of the battle began with a maneuver that violated every principle of sane military strategy. Human ships formed a sphere around the Korthak flagship and began moving inward, accepting devastating damage to ensure that the enemy couldn't escape. Captain Santos, her destroyer now little more than an engine with guns attached, made the final sacrifice that defined human warfare. Admiral. This is Santos. My ship's reactor is going critical, but I can control it for about 3 minutes. Santos, eject. That's an order. Negative, sir. I've got a shot at their main bio-neural cluster. Sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. The Yorktown, carrying the hopes of a species that had never learned to surrender, dove toward the heart of the Korthak flagship. Captain Santos held her course through quantum disruptor fire that would have vaporized a dozen ordinary ships, her crew working with mechanical precision to maintain heading toward the target. The explosion, when it came, was visible from 3 star systems away. The Korthak flagship's bio-neural network, overwhelmed by quantum feedback from its own weapons, experienced cascade failure that spread through the entire fleet. Within minutes, 43 Korthak vessels were drifting helplessly, their crews trapped in ships that no longer responded to commands. The most feared military force in the galaxy had been defeated by a species they dismissed as primitive. The aftermath brought changes that rippled across the cosmos. The Zeltharian people, saved from extinction, sent delegations to Earth with medical technologies that revolutionized human healthcare. The Valorian Republic, ashamed of their cowardice, began military exchanges that upgraded human defensive capabilities. Most importantly, the galaxy learned that technological superiority meant nothing without the will to use it effectively. The human victory at Kepler 442 became the subject of military academies throughout known space. But perhaps the most significant change was in how advanced civilizations viewed the small blue planet on the galactic rim. Earth was no longer dismissed as primitive. They were recognized as something far more dangerous. A species that had weaponized their own mortality, turning their willingness to die for strangers into the ultimate strategic advantage. Admiral Jackson, standing on the bridge of the battered Pride of Earth, received congratulations from civilizations across the galaxy. But his response was typically human. "We didn't win this battle because we were strong," he told the assembled galactic representatives. "We won because we were willing to lose everything to protect beings we'd never met." That's not primitive. That's human. The Korthak Empire, their expansion halted for the first time in centuries, retreated to their core systems to contemplate their defeat. Their biomechanical intelligences struggled to process a simple truth: that sometimes courage matters more than technology. And on Earth, as the survivors returned home, humanity began preparing for the inevitable. Because they knew the galaxy was full of threats that would test their resolve again. But they also knew something their enemies didn't: that humans had turned warfare into an art form. And they were just getting started. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun, carried forward by warriors who understood that sometimes the most primitive weapon was also the most effective. The refusal to surrender, when surrender was the only logical choice. The galaxy would never be the same.